Life coaching, what it is and what it isn't. As I was writing the script for this talk, the first thing I thought about was how others define life coaching. You see, the problem is that life coaching, unlike therapeutic counselling, isn't regulated either in the UK or the USA, which means that there's no accepted definition of what life coaching actually is. With this in mind, rather than being influenced by what other people's definitions are, I wanted to think about what life coaching means to me. I suppose a good starting point is to state very clearly that life coaching is most definitely not a form of therapeutic counselling. So, if you have suffered or are currently suffering trauma of any kind, then it's not appropriate. It is also not the appropriate choice in many cases if you are wrestling with the kind of learned behaviours that are imprinted on us in childhood that we take with us into adulthood. This could be a conflict avoidant personality, for example, or a situation where we continue to please others and are unable to put our own needs first, because we've been told from an early age that if you don't put others first, then you're selfish. However, whilst life coaching can't help clients reprogram new behaviours using such tools as cognitive behaviour therapy, CBT, or hypnotherapy, it may still be useful. Sometimes helping a client to gain an awareness of their own psychological makeup can be enough, so that once they're aware of a certain pattern of behaviour, they may be capable of making changes to that behaviour without any professional help. So, with all that said, what do I think life coaching actually involves and what it is? Well, the first thing to say is that it's confidential. Whatever you tell me will not be divulged to anyone else. There is only one exception to this, and this is if you admit to having committed a crime or you tell me that you are planning to commit a crime. So I won't tell anyone else what we talk about, and I will listen. That sounds like a strange thing to say, but how often do we actually get listened to? Often it seems that whilst we're talking, the other person isn't listening, but they already have what they want to say in their head, and they'll spit it out the minute you stop talking, if they can wait that long. I won't do that. I will listen, and I will give you the time to talk, because quite often the simple act of talking about a problem can make it seem far less daunting. In most cases, the session inevitably starts with the client introducing themselves, who they are, where they're from, their background, childhood, that kind of thing. From there we'll probably proceed to talking about what's going right in your life as well as what's going wrong, if it's possible to identify this straight away. At this point we also may examine any dilemmas you're facing. At some point we are certain to examine expectations, both your expectations of yourself, your expectations of others, and your expectations of how the wider society operates. I've talked about narratives and expectations in another video, but it boils down to this. An expectation based on a realistic understanding of something will be helpful to you, whilst an expectation based on misunderstanding, delusion or fantasy will only bring pain and anguish, because at some point the delusion will have a head-on collision with reality. A perfect example of this are those women who get divorced. Even with a few kids in tow, and a body that may be a decade or two older, they still have the expectations that their sexual desirability is the same as it was when they were younger and childless. When their delusion runs up against reality, and they can't get the 6-foot good-looking guy who makes 6 figures, the inevitable result is anguish, closely followed by boxed wine, antidepressants and cats. During my coaching session, I aim to be approachable and friendly. However, for the interaction to be of value, it's essential that we're both completely honest, and sometimes that can feel uncomfortable. But don't worry, I will not act in a judgmental fashion. I'm not here to judge you, I'm here to help if I possibly can. However, whilst I'm non-judgmental, this doesn't mean that my role is simply to affirm your views and interpretations, if I feel that these things are hindering rather than helping you. Also, I'll almost certainly need to ask questions, and perhaps at times this may seem brutal compared to the type of interaction that you have with friends and family. Interactions where big questions are often left unasked. If you're paying me, then it's my job to ask the kind of questions that you may not have been asked before, and this is done with the best of intentions to better understand you and the issues you're dealing with. Obviously, it's impossible to know how much time I'll need to spend with any particular client, but it's my intention that by the end of the process I will have helped you to better understand where you are in life and where you may wish to take it. In a way, I hope that you can metaphorically stand on my shoulders to get a better view of where you are now, and that you'll be able to see further into the distance to your objective. Before I end this video, perhaps it would also be useful if I gave you some background about me. I'm 57 years old, I'm single, and I live in the UK. I was married for 13 years and have been divorced for 2 decades and have 2 grown-up daughters and 2 grandchildren. I'm currently single and would like to have a relationship with a woman, but the chances of this happening are remote, simply because I set high standards, both for myself and for a prospective partner. Most women simply disqualify themselves because the majority are overweight, many are physically unfit, and a good percentage are on antidepressants. The same could, unfortunately, be said for many men, both in the UK and in the Western world generally. I would like to stress that whilst I consider my life to be good, I have had to deal with a number of struggles along the way, some of them of my own creation. The slow death of my marriage and subsequent divorce was hard, and I spent a week on a psychiatric ward before I somehow managed to pull myself together. My father was diagnosed with early onset dementia in his mid-50s, which is roughly the age I am now. He was dead at the age of 66, and I grieve for him still. For a number of years I was also heavily alcohol dependent, and towards the end of this period I was a full-blown alcoholic. I gave up drinking 8 years ago and have not had a drink since. I'm telling you this because I want you to know that, like anyone else, I've had a share of tragedy in my life, and I've also made my share of mistakes along the way. At the beginning, I mentioned the field of life coaching is not regulated, and this means that any snake oil salesman can step up as a life coach in an attempt to earn money under false pretenses. So, what makes me think I'm qualified to do this in an area where formal qualifications simply don't exist? Well, for nearly 4 years I was a listening volunteer with the Samaritans in the UK. The Samaritans are the leading charity in the UK that aims to reduce the number of people taking their own lives by suicide. The charity allows people to talk with trained volunteers via phone, email and other methods. Now, whilst the charity is to help those who are genuinely suicidal, the charity also talks to those who are not immediately suicidal as well. So this can include people facing all kinds of issues, including depression, relationship breakdown, job loss, and the stresses of COVID, to name but a few. This means that in the nearly 4 years that I was a volunteer, I had hundreds of interactions with people facing all kinds of problems. Everything from a teenager worried about her exams to someone about to take an overdose. This means that whatever issues you're facing, I've probably had some experience in the area already. In an attempt to further my own understanding, I've also read extensively in such areas as philosophy, psychology, evolutionary psychology, and gender dynamics. The final point I would make is this. If, at any point, I feel that I'm not equipped to help you with this process, then I will say so. Thank you for listening. If you think that my services may be of use to you, then please get in touch. Details below. Thank you for listening.